Welcome to the Fixing Incentives podcast, where we talk about the incentives that drive success. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi, David Malamed here. I'm the host of Fixing Incentives podcast, where I talk with top business leaders about their journey and the behavior that powered their growth. First, I want to give a shout out to Dr. Jeremy Weiss, who introduced me to this amazing guest I have on today. I'm in Agency Mastermind, Jason Swink's Agency Owner Mastermind, with Dr. Jeremy Weiss of Rise 25. And in one of the meetings, someone asked for a process consultant or an expert, and Dr. Jeremy Weiss couldn't stop mentioning my guest. Her name's Adi Klevit. And I just want to thank Dr. Jeremy Weiss for that introduction. So Adi is a process consultant and the founder of Business Success Consulting Group. They specialize in helping growing companies set up the systems and processes needed to scale efficiently. If you want to learn a little more about how they can help, you can visit her website at bizsuccesscg.com. That's bizsuccesscg.com. First, I want to jump into, before we get into the interview, just a quick note from our sponsor, which is Tenfold Traffic, my agency. And just the only projects I take on currently would be performance-based relationships, which basically means that all marketing would go through me on my own dime potentially, and we would negotiate a revenue share. I don't really want someone to give me money if I'm not generating money for them, but if I'm making someone a ton of money, I want to share in the revenue. I'm only looking for one or two clients a year to really pour my heart and soul into. And an ideal client is someone who's already got a converting experience. They're spending money on other channels, and they really want to scale and crush it. So I guess let's just jump right in. Adi, first, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, David, and thank you for having me as a guest and the wonderful introduction, and definitely a shout out to Jeremy for introducing us. So thank you, Jeremy.
Okay, great. So just a quick disclaimer. I hired Adi, and she's been a godsend with the multiple ways that she's helped me with my processes. But I want to start first with just asking her, how would you describe what you do and how you help companies?
Sure. So the main thing that I do is I bring order into companies. And whatever it means to that company is whatever it means to that particular company is you can experience, it's very tailor-made. It's not a cookie cutter, well, I'm going to do the same thing for everyone. So it's all in the area of implementing systems, implementing processes. But the end goal is for my clients to be more productive, more effective, more efficient, and be able to scale and grow.
All right, great. So, I've attempted, I think everybody that's read the E-Myth knows that they think they need to turn their business into a McDonald's franchise. I've seen people, disagree with that, especially in skilled trade, but I know running a creative, in the creative fields, executive function is not always a strong suit. So I think most people will buy into the general idea that they need systems or processes, but they don't necessarily know where to start or how to really unblock them or figure out where the bottlenecks are. So how do you, when you go into a business, how do you start figuring out, how to create that tailor-made solution that they actually need?
I will answer that, but before that, just to add more to what you just said in terms of, the needing to have systems like the McDonald's system, right? So each business need those systems. They might not need as rigorous a systems as you would think about a McDonald's franchise, but you do need a system. What is a system? A system is a repetitive, consistent way of doing something. Because if you don't, you're just wasting your time every single time, reinventing yourself. You're wasting time doing actions that could have been systematized, even better automated, so you can actually concentrate on what's important for your business. So when we talk about marketing agencies or creatives, systems are as important as in any other business, because it will allow you to do better and more of what you do best, which is being a creative. But then you don't have to go down to all the mundane um, actions, all the actions that need to be there anyway that somebody else can do, that is not your genius zone. So basically, we need to figure out, so now to answer your question, how do I get started? How do I figure out? So it's really seeing where the person's genius zone is and figure it out how they should actually operate within that genius zone, as opposed to somewhere else that is tedious, or it's a lot of work, or it's not as efficient, or not as revenue producing as it should be. And it doesn't mean that for another person, let's say for a virtual assistant, that is their genius zone and they will enjoy tremendously. It's just we have to make sure that people are actually placed correctly in their, basically the right seats on the bus, or whatever another analogy we want to use. And one of the things that I always look at when I start working on a project is assessing the existing pain points and also future pain points, something that can happen in the future that is not optimal, that can create some kind of a risk for the business. So it cannot grow. So the question really to ask is, what area of the company, if you had well documented processes and systems right now, will get you the biggest return on investment? And then we discuss what return on investment is, because return on investment is not always money. Of course, everything will lead to the profit, but return on investment can also be time. So time is an asset that we only have so much of, that we have to utilize correctly. So if you say, well, as a business owner, if I had another 10 hours a week, I can take another big client because I will be able to work on that client and actually help them, then okay, let's figure out how you can create another 10 hours a week so you can't work on your dream client.
That's great. So I'm curious, just what got you to where you are today, to have that clarity, to recognize that genius zone, and obviously your own genius zone would be in either recognizing, where you can, I guess, create the most efficiency out of your client's time. So you have 25 years experience. You started as an industrial engineer. I'm not quite sure what an industrial engineer is. I don't know if that's what this is, or if that's something. I think industrial engineer, and I think someone's designing like machines and factories.
That will be one aspect of it. Really, what attracted me to study industrial engineering is when I was looking at what industrial engineering is, it basically was a combination of science and understanding how people tick, what makes them tick, and how they behave, etc. So it was a combination of those two aspects that really got me interested, because I was very good at science, but I also really liked people, and I like helping people, and I like understanding people and figuring out ways that to help and to make things easier and better. So that combination of the science and the human aspect of it together really brought me to explore that path. And what I'm doing today will be a continuation of that. It just, my career had different aspects to it, in terms of working for an international consulting company and managing a big crew there, or a big team, and to different aspects, to finally really starting my own company and realizing that I just love creating processes for people. I love putting order in. I like to go into a chaos of successful companies, because my clients, one of the prerequisites to become my client is that you have to be successful. You have to have a vision. You have to be driven. You want to do better, more, and you want to produce more, right? So I want to help people like that by introducing order and systems, especially when they feel like they cannot do it themselves. So I can be that arm of the business that does that and organizes the business in such a way that it's easy and repeatable, and there is repetition and consistency, so they can get to the products that they really know how to do.
Got it. Very interesting. So over the course of your career, has there been any tough lessons you learned, or epiphanies, light bulb moments where, because I think systems and processes, you mentioned order, it sounds so like paint by numbers structured from the outset. But I mean, I've been working with you now, and I see clearly that it's a dynamic, um, you know, even the process of working together. And I'm curious in general, like if someone does very custom work for every client, so like I guess in theory you could systematize invoicing or things like that. But how would you? I mean, are there things you've learned along the way about either you mentioned what makes people tick, which is really what this podcast is about, fixing, understanding the incentives of human behavior. I just like to do it through marketing versus through internal processes. But I mean, are there any things misunderstood or tough lessons you learned over the years that really changed how you think about putting order into businesses?
Sure. So I think that it's a great question, and I think the main one is that I learned that not everyone is the same. That we're all different, but we're all important, and our differences is what makes make life more interesting, right? And it's really embracing those differences and not try to change people. I'm not in a business of changing people, because if somebody is not going to now operate just have like those strict SOPs and work by them because they're very creative, I'm not into changing them. Okay, now you're going to do that. What it's intriguing for me is to figure out how can I take who they are and work with them so we can adjust the system to the person and not the person to the system. And that's I think the toughest lesson in terms of not trying to mold the people into a system, because that doesn't work, especially if you're an entrepreneur. Maybe if you work in a big corporation and that's the way it is, that's what is expected from you. You either do it or you go, or you get fired. That's a whole different approach, right? But when you're an entrepreneur, and majority of my clients are entrepreneurs, they are business owners, or I work with their staff, but it still has that, you're there, you have that entrepreneurial spirit, and you can't all of a sudden change it and be strict or be something that you are not. So that's why it's very important to work with the person in front of you, to really adapt to their voice. So like, for instance, I have a client that I was just working with them this morning, and I looked at the processes that we were writing, and I go, you know what? It doesn't have enough of your voice. Let's add some, because they're very light. They're a young, fun, light kind of company. But as you start documenting, sometimes when you write things, it doesn't come across necessarily. It comes across more stern and serious. And I go, this is too serious. Let's lighten up. Maybe you use some of the slang that you use, or let's use some pictures or some emojis or things that you communicate anyway that way, and will communicate better, so people will actually want to listen to you. So that's really the art of the communication here, is communicating something that others would want to read, and it's not boring, or now I have to read it, etc. So it's really adapting the system to the person and not the other way around.
Very interesting. I have so many questions about this, but I'm going to ask a personal one because it's in the back of my mind always anyway. But you're going into chaotic situations and you're putting order into them. Does that get really frustrating for you? Because I would imagine like every single entrepreneur you deal with has their own quirks and their own, who they are. And you mentioned you're not trying to change them, but does it get frustrating for you to, especially if you're so, process driven, to I guess to deal with that kind of almost neurotic behavior sometimes?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So I'm really not, because I am not neurotic in terms of the process driven. Okay, so now we're only going to do it this way and that's it, right? I mean, I have my ability to adapt and change, and I enjoy talking to different personalities. I mean, that's what I love doing. So as I said, I had different things that I was doing throughout my career, but I found something that I really feel like I'm passionate about, and I enjoy what I'm doing. And I also enjoy working with my clients. And when I say I don't take anyone as a client, it is true. I do the interview, when you and I talk, I do, to begin working together, I do my interview as much as I'm being interviewed by my clients, because I want to work with entrepreneurs that have a vision and really want to make it better. But they are running into blocks for some reason or other, but it's not like they are not willing to overcome. I don't want to work with clients that don't want to overcome the roadblocks, right? They just put the roadblocks there in order to prove you that there are roadblocks and look at those beautiful roadblocks and I'm not going to do anything about it. That's where it becomes frustrating. And that's where, it just won't work. The relationship is not going to work. But so long as we identify the vision and we keep the eye on the mountain and we have the agreement on that we communicate, so like, let's say when we work together and I suggest something, because, I can't read your mind. So I think, okay, David, how about if we do this, this, and that? And go, you know what? I tried that. I hate it. I don't want to do it. So at that point, I would either say, okay, because I think that we have an alternative. Or if I feel strongly about something because I've seen it work before, then I will get your willingness and agreement by asking questions. Oh, tell me, like, what happened? Did you try it before? What happened? Let's identify the different parts of what happened before. And then maybe we'll identify that you did it this way, but I go, okay, yeah, that's the problem right here. Maybe we can do it this way. And then you go, oh, okay, well, let's try it. And then we kind of like building this puzzle together. So it's really a collaborative approach. It's not didactic. It's not me telling you, oh, no, we're going to do it this way and that way and that way. It's really a collaboration. And that is, I think, what makes a really strong relationship, business relationship, because I want to be a trusted advisor. I want you to trust me that I'm advising you correctly. And I want to be the person that you will, if something is not going right, or that you found another problem, that you call me so we can resolve it together. But also not be the person that, you look to me to be the solver of every single problem, because I do not have the solution for everything, right? I have tools, I have experience, I have knowledge, but like anything else, it's something with marketing, because I work with many marketing agencies. So I know it to be true that it's not a science. I mean, yeah, you have things that are for sure. You have to do certain things for it to work, but some of it is trial and error. That's why we have A/B testing, right? Or we test this ad and it didn't work, or this one worked. But then the fun part is, why did it work? Let's identify it. Let's see what we can actually replicate and do again, so it's actually successful.
Interesting. You mentioned you have the tools, or so one thing I was thinking about is, I wonder if a lot of the problems that I've tried to solve in my business, or other agency owners and entrepreneurs have tried to solve, they try to solve it with another subscription for another SaaS tool, that without understanding that the problem is actually in their systems and processes, or in their, clarifying their vision, or other, earlier pieces that are, not letting them, basically they're putting band-aids on symptoms without realizing it along the way. I'm a little addicted to SaaS tools and stuff, and I'm paying a lot of money on a lot of different subscriptions. But one question I see come up nonstop, all over the place, all the time, and I've a textbook answer I give, which is, which CRM is better? Should I do HubSpot? Should I do Salesforce? Should I use something else? Should I use, Active Campaign or MailChimp for, they confuse the email marketing with that, or Zoho or something open source. And then along those lines, they'll also ask that same question about project management tools. What should I use? Should I use Basecamp? Should I use Asana? Should I use ClickUp? Should I use Trello? Should I use Monday? And everybody's got their recommendation about what they use, and I know people go really deep into these things. And I've used every project management tool because different clients are on different things, and
Right.
almost all of them ended up just being another login and another 20 notifications in my inbox a day, and distractions, and almost none of them moved projects forward the way they needed to move forward. And I always thought it was just because I needed the right person driving project management. But I think it was because I didn't understand what systems and processes really were for, and how they're supposed to, like, you should feel when you have it in place. Like, we work together on Inbox Zero, and it's still a work in progress. But one thing I discovered is it's very easy for me to procrastinate on an email. Oh, this is an important email. I think I want to look at this later. I'm not sure when, maybe this afternoon, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. It's not really urgent. And my inbox kept on getting cluttered. And every newsletter coming in from companies, and I want to read them, but I don't have time this minute. And I didn't understand that what I was creating was a bunch of things that I love doing deep work. And I was creating a whole bunch of distractions that make it very difficult to go deep because there's constantly just stimuli coming at me. I almost need to unplug, from everything in order to even have a break from that. So I'm curious, do you see the same? And when you make tool recommendations, do you think that the indecisiveness and debate between different tools is people, just it's an excuse or they're trying to solve the wrong problem? Like, what do you think is going on there that everybody seems to constantly have this debate about which project management tool to use or which CRM to use?
That's excellent. I mean, you mentioned several things, and I think it's an excellent topic. So, first of all, I'll tell you a story of my experience when I just started as an industrial engineer, fresh out of college. I was doing a project, was working for a consulting company, and we were doing a project for one of the big companies, Fortune 100 companies. And one of my responsibility at the time was to document a process, because that's what industrial engineering also does, is like, make process more efficient, documenting the process. So then the software engineer will follow and create a solution with software. So that's where I learned my first lesson, is that you have to have your house in order. You have to have your processes, the actual real life physical universe that we can touch and see, in order for them to then be duplicated by a software. So that's first of all. You don't use software as a solution, because that is, like you said, it's a symptom, it's a patch up, it's a band-aid. You have to figure out the root cause. If something is not working, it's because there is something in the way you're doing it, the way you're thinking, the way the sequence is. That's what you have to solve first, and then bring the software tool. Because otherwise you are just kind of like stuck with that software tool and it's rigid and you can't change it, right? So I always like to ask, how do you do it in real life? Because we are so used to the virtual and software, but how do you do it in real life? Walk me through it. Oh, okay, so this is what you do. All right, this is how we're going to mimic it with the software once we solve the problem and we've seen it actually works. So that's one aspect of it. In terms of being addicted to SaaS tools, I'm the same way, because I'm right now onboarding a virtual assistant, a new one. And I was like typing up like all the systems she needs to learn. I go like, wow, I can't believe I have so many. Just because I enjoy them. I just like, it's something I enjoy, but I don't feel that it's a burden for me because I enjoy it, So I understand that. And I like automation. I like new tools. I like to explore. I like to see, well, maybe this is better or that one is better. So I don't think there is anything wrong with that, so long as you know what you're doing and it's under control. So it's not really an addiction. It's a moderate use, like anything in life. If you do it moderately, it's okay. When you start going obsessive or it's out of control, that's where we have the problem. So that's on they're being SaaS happy and having all these logins, etc. That's why we have LastPass, where we can keep all the logins and it's not a problem. So in terms of the indecisiveness, what I would say to that is, figure out what your process is. So let's say, for instance, this sales process, okay? Figure out what is your sales process before you go into a CRM, because then it will be so much easier than to create the sequence in the CRM. Like, I have a client right now, we're working on documenting their sales process, and we documented it first. And then once they had a very clear vision of what it is, they were able to see that their current CRM is not doing what they need to be doing. So they were able to change to a more sophisticated one, but they already had the process defined. So then it was easy to figure out the steps in the new CRM, as an example. So define the process. And in terms of being indecisive, just choose one. That will be my answer. Don't go into, let's compare all the features in ClickUp versus Monday versus Asana. It's okay to do that if you're really, really good at it. Like, for instance, for me, because I live that, I do it, I just switch from one to another. I still like both, but I had a feature in one that I preferred, but I already was really good at it. I was using the boards. My team and I communicate via the project management system. I had it set up. I had all the tags and everything. And I listened to somebody's blog and I go, oh, wow, this sounds interesting. Let's try it, because I wanted to be proficient at that as well. So that was me, because I'm an expert at that. But if you are not an expert and you're just starting, just choose one. When you're starting, they're all very much similar, and they are very much similar. They have a little bit of, maybe this automation is better, or that they have this feature, or, the subtasks show in a different view differently. If you're just beginning, it doesn't matter. If you're an expert already, then you will be able to make the decision because you'll be able to see. But don't make it too complicated. Make a decision. And that's what I help my clients do, because I know all those systems. That's what I do, is I keep myself up to date. So then I can ask a few questions, and I know which one I would recommend Asana, which one I would recommend Monday, and which one I would recommend ClickUp, because I can see the differences. But if you are not there, just choose one, start with it, commit. And then after 2 years, when you are like a master of that one and you decide, no, I outgrew that one, I have to move to something better, then take a look at it.
Got it. Now, I have two questions, and I know we don't have much time left, but when you're working with clients, do they often have blind spots about what they need to solve or where their problems are? Or do they pretty much know what the problems are and they've just struggled to, actually find a solution that doesn't require changing themselves?
It's an interesting question, because I think that if they already had a solution, they wouldn't contact me. They wouldn't be my clients. I mean, why hire? Why,
Right.
Why would they? But of course, I mean, I have it too. I learn every day. I mean, it's one of my core values is, lifelong learning, right? I mean, I'm curious. I like to learn. I like to find out. That's why I like those tools, because I find different things that I learn about it. I didn't know that they exist. Like, I was recording a podcast with somebody, and they use fireflies.ai. And I go, what is that? And then he told me, and then I went and looked at it, and it's basically like an automatic note-taking app. And it's changed the way that I operate, because instead of me taking notes all the time, I can just record it and then use it, and it's just so much easier. So it's really a matter of, do you want to improve? Do you want to learn? And do you have the mindset of, let me stay in my lane because I'm doing what I'm doing, and then hire other people to do the things that I'm not as good at, right? You can use the Eisenhower metrics for those of you that you're familiar with it. What's urgent and important for you, right? What can you delegate that is important but not urgent and somebody else can do? So that's the planning. But if it's not urgent, I think it's like urgent, I don't remember it now, but you have basically a place there where it is, you can delegate, right? If it's not important that you do it yourself, or it's urgent, not important, you don't do it. But the other ones that, you feel like for yourself that it is important, it needs to be done, but it's not urgent that I do it myself, delegate that.
Got it. Very interesting. The fireflies example, it's very interesting because I use something called Otter. So I have my Zoom calls go straight into Otter, which is a transcription tool as well. I tested a bunch of different solutions. All of these were because sometimes I'll have a client call and we'll discuss some sort of action item, and I don't want to forget it and don't want to fall through the cracks, and I don't want to sit there typing agenda notes during a call, every single call.
Right.
But one thing I discovered is through our discussions is that different types of communication really belongs in different places and different formats. And I wonder if the solution there was, action items should be submitted to the project management tool. I
Yeah. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like if a client emails me a task right now, like I already have it set up in a way that it's just 2 clicks for me to forward that straight into ClickUp into that client's thing. And I wouldn't have done that if not for, like, there's a step in there that would never occur to me that you had me do, which is save the email address for the ClickUp list with a name that is easy to recognize as ClickUp and easy to recognize as a client. So I have them saved in my contacts as CU for ClickUp and then the client name. So every time a task comes in, I either CC the email if I'm replying, BCC if I'm replying, or another thing was you had me change the subject line of forwarding the email because that creates the task name. These are like small things that wouldn't occur to me that make a huge difference. So I think a lot of times, like with the transcriptions, I was sitting there trying to solve a problem of just like better, making sure things don't fall through the cracks without realizing that the problem was in my communication chaos, not in my needing to take notes during a call.
Right. But then what you're using the artificial intelligence to take calls, it just makes it easy because now you have a system. And the system is that you are going to put in ClickUp your action items. So then when you're recording, you can actually, what I do when I talk to a client and I'm recording it, I say action item before I actually give them the action item, because then I can create a little tag in Fireflies or a little whatever they call it and label, and then it immediately finds all the places where I said action items, and I my VA, my virtual assistant, she takes it and puts it as notes in ClickUp. So but I built that system because I already had a communication system built up.
Right. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm saying it's like, you really need to build the systems first and figuring out. And what you and I did together, it's so important to have good communication systems because the communication can be just become jammed. And then you just like it paralyzes you because it's easier to just sit in front of the emails and just look at emails as opposed to going and doing the deep work, right? And like start thinking, and those that requires creativity, etc. And it's kind of like, you get distracted by everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that's great. And I didn't realize Fireflies had those keyword, I guess.
Or you can search it too. You can search it and it shows up, or you can label it. So on the side, on the left side, when you open Fireflies, you'll see the different bubbles. I think they call it labels or whatever it's called.
Very cool. This is very interesting. I'm working with you. It's going great so far. I've already reached inbox zero. Things are unblocked for me. I'm very excited for what I'm going to be able to do as I have more order brought into how I run the work I do. So Adi, what would be the best way for people to get a hold of you if to see if you're a good fit, or to even just learn from you? I know you have a podcast as well. What would you recommend the best way for someone to either connect with you or learn more from you?
Sure. So the best way would be to go to my website. So it's bizsuccesscg.com. So BIZ, the word success spelled out, CG for consulting group. So bizsuccesscg.com, and go to my articles and blog tab. I have a lot of articles there about productivity, about what I find successful when working with businesses. So there's definitely a lot of information there. And you can also sign up for my newsletter so you can get that article to your inbox or to the box or to the folder where you set up to get your newsletters. And you can also email me. There is contact us in the website. And if you want to listen to my podcast, it's called the Systems Simplified podcast. And you can find it if you are listening to this podcast. You can also go in probably the same place, Spotify or Apple Podcast or Google Podcast, and look for the Systems Simplified podcast. And you can hear different episodes about systematizing a business and ideas and tips about that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, David.
Thanks for listening to the Fixing Incentives podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.